Fiancée claims my sister would ruin wedding photos if she was a bridesmaid. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. My fiancé looked me dead in the eye and said my sister's condition didn't fit her color palette. I'm Mark. I'm 28, and until about a month ago, I thought my life was perfectly mapped out. I had a solid job, a beautiful fiancée named Chloe, and a wedding date set for the upcoming spring. Chloe was everything I thought I wanted: driven, stunning, and meticulously organized. She worked in marketing and ran a lifestyle Instagram account on the side, meaning every corner of her apartment, and by extension my life, was curated for maximum visual appeal. At first, I found her dedication charming. I'm a pretty simple guy, so having someone who cared about the details felt like a nice balance. But I failed to see the warning signs hidden behind the pastel filters and perfectly staged brunch photos. My anchor in the real world is my younger sister, Sarah. She's 24, and she's the sweetest person you will ever meet. Growing up, it was just the two of us and our parents in a chaotic, loud, and loving household. Sarah has always been my priority. A few months ago, life threw her a massive curveball. She was diagnosed with a severe case of alopecia. Within weeks, she lost almost all of her hair. It absolutely crushed her. She went from being this vibrant, outgoing girl to someone who wore oversized hoodies and avoided mirrors at all costs. I spent hours sitting on her bedroom floor, telling her she was still beautiful, but I knew the healing process was going to be a long, painful road. When Chloe and I got engaged, Sarah cried tears of joy. She bought a stack of bridal magazines the very next day, excited to be part of the process. I envisioned my future wife and my little sister bonding, laughing over cake tastings and flower arrangements. I pictured Sarah standing up there with us, beaming. But Chloe had a very different vision for our wedding day. To her, it wasn't a celebration of love, it was a content creation opportunity. And in her flawless, perfectly curated world, my sister's pain was nothing more than an aesthetic liability. The first crack in the glass happened sooner than I expected. I never imagined the nightmare that was waiting for us just around the corner. To understand how blind I was, you have to understand the dynamic between Chloe and my family. My parents are loud, practical, salt-of-the-earth people who express love through massive plates of food and uncomfortably tight hugs. Chloe always seemed polite around them, but there was a subtle stiffness. She'd quietly wipe down silverware or make passive-aggressive comments about how our family home was delightfully vintage. I always brushed it off as a difference in upbringing. Her family was wealthy, distant, and treated emotions like a terrible faux pas. I genuinely thought I was bringing warmth into her life. But when Sarah's alopecia started, the contrast became impossible to ignore. Sarah was emotionally raw. She was mourning a part of her identity. I was spending a lot of my weekends over at my parents' house, just sitting with Sarah, watching movies, and trying to get her to laugh. Chloe, on the other hand, treated the diagnosis like an inconvenience. Have you ever looked at the person you love and realized you don't know them at all? I remember the first time I brought it up to Chloe. I was practically in tears, explaining how much my sister was hurting. Chloe didn't look up from her phone. She was adjusting the brightness on a photo of an avocado toast. She just sighed and said, "That's a shame, babe. Do you think she'll get a wig? A high-quality one, I mean." It felt like a punch to the gut. No empathy. No concern for Sarah's mental health. Just a cold calculation of how my sister would present herself to the world. I told myself Chloe just didn't know how to handle illness. I made excuses for her, but the tension kept growing. Sarah was trying so hard to stay positive. She bought a few colorful headscarves and tried to make jokes about saving money on shampoo. But every time Chloe was around, the temperature in the room dropped. Chloe would stare at Sarah's head just a second too long. Her expression caught somewhere between pity and disgust. Sarah noticed it. I noticed it. But nobody said a word. We all just played along, pretending everything was perfectly fine while the resentment quietly festered. The real problems began when the official wedding planning kicked into high gear. I was about to find out just how ruthlessly my fiancée protected her precious image. The wedding planning started with a flurry of excitement, but it didn't take long for the first red flags to start flying. The bridal dress shopping is usually a huge milestone. Sarah had been talking about it for weeks. She even bought a special planner to take notes for Chloe. But when the Saturday of the appointment rolled around, Sarah wasn't invited. I found out when I went to my parents' house to fix a leaky sink and found Sarah sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. I asked her why she wasn't at the boutique, and her face crumbled. Chloe said there was a strict limit on guests, she muttered, wiping a tear away quickly. Only her mom, her sister, and her 2 best friends. It's okay. I understand. It wasn't okay. My blood boiled. I instantly texted Chloe, demanding to know why my sister was left out. Her response came back 3 minutes later, sprinkled with heart emojis. Babe, the boutique is tiny. They strictly said only 4 guests. Plus, my car was totally full. We'll do a special brunch just the 2 of us later, I promise. Love you. It sounded reasonable enough, if you didn't look too closely. But something gnawed at me. I called the boutique directly later that afternoon, pretending to be a confused fiancé confirming the reservation. I asked about the guest limit. The cheerful receptionist informed me that they easily accommodate up to 8 guests in their private suites. Chloe had lied. The excuse about the car was garbage too, considering her maid of honor, Jessica, drives a massive SUV. I confronted Chloe that night, keeping my tone casual. Hey, the boutique said they allow 8 people. Why didn't Sarah come? Chloe didn't even flinch. She just expertly flipped the script, her eyes welling up with tears. Mark, are you interrogating me? I was so stressed trying to manage my mom and Jessica. I didn't want Sarah to feel uncomfortable around my friends while she's dealing with her situation. She made me feel like the bad guy. I ended up apologizing to her for ruining the special day. She completely manipulated me. I ignored the warning bells in my head, but the worst was yet to come. A month later, the official bridal party was announced. Chloe hosted an extravagant proposal dinner for her bridesmaids. She had these custom, engraved boxes made, filled with champagne, expensive silk robes, and personalized jewelry. The photos were instantly plastered all over her Instagram, complete with a heavily filtered group shot of her, her sister, Jessica, and 3 other friends from college. Sarah wasn't in the photos. Sarah wasn't at the dinner. Sarah wasn't a bridesmaid. I saw the post while I was at work, and my stomach plummeted. I immediately called Chloe, but she sent me straight to voicemail. When I finally got home, I found her meticulously organizing wedding magazines on the coffee table. Before I could even raise my voice, she pulled out a printed schedule. I've thought of the perfect role for Sarah, she announced, beaming as if she had just solved world hunger. She can be in charge of the guest book and handing out the ceremony programs. It's a very important job, Mark. She'll be the first face people see. Handing out programs. It was the ultimate pity role. It was the job you give to a 12-year-old cousin, not the groom's sister. Chloe, you have 5 bridesmaids, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Why isn't my sister one of them? Chloe sighed, offering me a look of condescending patience. Mark, her self-esteem is so fragile right now. Do you really think she wants to stand up in front of 200 people? She'd be miserable. This takes the pressure off her. The next day, I went to see Sarah. She had already seen the posts. She forced a bright, plastic smile and told me she was thrilled to be in charge of the programs. She said she didn't want to deal with the stress of a bridesmaid dress anyway. But as I was leaving, I looked back through the window. Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table, her head buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. That broke me. My sister was drowning in insecurity, and my fiancée was actively pushing her head under the water. I couldn't pretend anymore. I drove straight back to our apartment to demand the absolute, unfiltered truth from her. I slammed the front door of our apartment so hard the framed aesthetic prints on the wall rattled. Chloe was on the couch, typing frantically on her phone. She looked up, annoyed. Mark, please. I'm finalizing the floral budget. I didn't care about the flowers. I stood over her. You are making Sarah a bridesmaid, I stated. It wasn't a question, it was an ultimatum. Chloe rolled her eyes and set her phone down, her pleasant facade finally slipping. We already discussed this. She is handing out programs. It's settled. I pushed harder. No, it's not. I know she's devastated. Stop pretending you're doing this for her mental health. Tell me the real reason. The silence in the room grew heavy and toxic. Chloe glared at me, her jaw tight. All the fake sweetness evaporated. You want the truth, Mark? Fine. She snapped, standing up to meet my gaze. I have spent thousands of dollars and months of my life planning this wedding. The photos are forever. They are going to be published in a bridal magazine. I cannot have someone standing next to me in a cheap wig looking like a cancer patient. She doesn't fit the aesthetic, Mark. She will ruin the photos. The words hung in the air, echoing in the quiet apartment. My fiancé looked me dead in the eye and said my sister's condition didn't fit her color palette. I felt physically sick. The person I loved, the woman I was supposed to marry, had just reduced my sister's profound suffering to a visual inconvenience. I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back, to claim she was just stressed and misspoke. But she didn't. She just crossed her arms, looking defiant, as if she was the victim of my unreasonable demands. "You're disgusting," I whispered. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. The sheer disgust in my voice seemed to finally rattle her. She reached out, but I stepped back, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. I drove around for hours, my mind spinning. The foundation of our relationship was crumbling, and I wasn't sure if it could be salvaged. I thought her vanity was the worst of it, but the rabbit hole went deeper. I spent the next 2 nights crashing on the sofa at Dave's place. Dave is my best man, my oldest friend, and the most brutally honest guy I know. I finally broke down and told him exactly what Chloe had said about the photos. I expected Dave to tell me I was overreacting, or that wedding stress makes people say crazy things. Instead, he got very quiet. He took a slow sip of his beer and stared at the floor. "Mark, man." I didn't want to say anything because I thought I was misreading it. Dave started, his voice heavy. "But at your engagement barbecue last month, I saw something." He explained that while I was busy grilling, Sarah had walked past Chloe's group of friends. She was wearing a new headscarf, trying to look festive. Dave was standing near the patio door and saw Jessica, the maid of honor, nudge Chloe. He said they both looked at Sarah, covered their mouths, and started giggling uncontrollably. Chloe then pulled out her phone, typed something rapidly, and all the bridesmaids' phones chimed simultaneously. They all looked at their screens and burst into a fresh round of suppressed laughter. My blood ran cold. Have you ever looked at a situation and suddenly realized all the puzzle pieces form a horrifying picture? It wasn't just about the wedding photos. It was never just about a bridal magazine aesthetic. Chloe wasn't just vain. She was cruel. And she had enlisted an entire squad of women to join in on her cruelty. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice cracking. Dave nodded grimly. "I'm sure, man. I thought maybe it was an inside joke I didn't get. But hearing what she said to you, it's bad, Mark. Real bad." I felt a sickening wave of guilt wash over me. While I had been making excuses for my fiancée, she and her friends had been actively treating my sister like a walking punchline. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what was being said behind my back, and more importantly, behind Sarah's back. I packed up my gym bag and told Dave I was going home. It was time to stop arguing and start hunting for the ugly, undeniable digital truth. I walked back into my apartment like a ghost. Chloe immediately tried to act like nothing had happened. She offered a half-hearted apology, claiming the wedding planning was making her crazy and that she loved Sarah. She promised we would find a special dress for Sarah to wear while she handed out the programs. I played along. I forced a smile, kissed her forehead, and told her I understood. It was the hardest acting job of my life, but I couldn't tip my hand. I needed access to her devices. My opportunity came 2 nights later. Chloe was taking a long bath, doing one of her extensive skincare routines. Her iPad was sitting on the kitchen island, unlocked. We had an open policy with our devices, usually just using whoever's tablet was closest to check the weather or order food. I picked it up. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I opened her messaging app and scrolled down. There it was. A group chat titled Aesthetic Angels, with Chloe, Jessica, and the other bridesmaids. I clicked on it. The most recent messages were mostly boring complaints about dress fittings and seating charts. I almost breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe Dave had been wrong. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then I used the search function within the chat. I typed in Sarah. My heart stopped as dozens of results populated the screen. The preview snippets alone made my stomach churn. "Did you see what Sarah wore? OMG, Sarah's head. Please tell me Sarah isn't coming." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to read. I clicked on the earliest search result, dating back to right after Sarah's diagnosis. I started scrolling through months of conversations. It was a digital diary of pure, unfiltered high school-level bullying, spearheaded by the woman I was planning to marry. I felt like I was going to be physically sick right there in the kitchen. Every single message I read was a dagger aimed directly at my vulnerable little sister. I opened the chat fully, and the sheer volume of cruelty was staggering. Discovering what she was hiding broke me. It wasn't just bridezilla stress. It was a systematic, calculated campaign of mockery. Jessica had sent a picture of Sarah at a family dinner, taken secretly across the table. Sarah was wearing a blonde wig she had just bought, feeling insecure but trying to be brave. Jessica's caption read, "Major Cynthia from Rugrats vibes today." Chloe had responded with a string of laughing emojis and typed, "I know. It looks like roadkill. I can't even look at her during dinner." It got worse. They had a running joke about Sarah's glow down. When Sarah wasn't invited to the dress boutique, it wasn't because of space. Chloe had explicitly messaged the group, "Operation Nobaldi is a go. Told Mark the shop is tiny. We can drink champagne without depressing hospital vibes." They weren't just excluding her. They were actively protecting their precious aesthetic from her very existence. The cruelest part was how Chloe acted to my face. She would send me sympathetic texts about Sarah's condition, then immediately turn to this group chat and tear her apart. It was a complete double life. She was a sociopath with a Pinterest board. They mocked her clothes, her makeup, and even the way she smiled. They treated her pain as their personal reality show entertainment. My vision blurred with angry tears. This was my sister, the girl who had defended me from bullies in elementary school, the girl who spent her meager savings on my birthday gifts, and the woman sleeping in my bed, wearing a ring I bought, was treating her like garbage. The wedding wasn't just a party to Chloe. It was the series finale of her perfect Instagram life, and she was ruthlessly editing the cast. I felt a surge of rage so intense it scared me. I knew exactly what I had to do, but I needed to be incredibly careful. I didn't confront her right then. If I yelled at her while she was in the tub, she would just deny, deflect, and probably try to delete everything. I needed undeniable, concrete proof. I quickly forwarded the most damning screenshots from her iPad to my own phone. Dates, times, names, pictures. I documented all of it. Then I meticulously deleted the evidence of my text transfers from her device, closed the app, and placed the iPad exactly where I found it. The moral dilemma hit me hard the next morning at work. What was the right move? Part of me wanted to quietly cancel the vendors, eat the thousands of dollars in lost deposits, and just walk away. It would spare my family the drama and a public spectacle. But then I looked at the screenshot on my phone, the one where Chloe called my sister's trauma depressing hospital vibes. A quiet exit wasn't enough. Chloe relied on her carefully crafted public image. Her entire sense of self-worth was tied to how others perceived her perfectly curated life. If I just left, she would spin the narrative. She would play the heartbroken victim, telling everyone I got cold feet or went crazy. Sarah would still feel inferior, and Chloe would face zero consequences for her malicious bullying. No, the punishment had to fit the crime. She wanted an audience for her perfect life? I would give her an audience for her ugly reality. I called Dave during my lunch break. "I have the proof," I told him, my voice cold and steady. "It's worse than we thought." I outlined my plan. It was risky, and it was going to cause a massive explosion, but Dave didn't hesitate. "I'm in, brother. Whatever you need. Let's burn it down." We had 3 weeks until the rehearsal dinner. It was going to be an agonizing wait, pretending to play the happy groom. I had to swallow my disgust and play the loving fiancé for 21 long days. Those 3 weeks were absolute torture. I had to smile through cake tastings, nod enthusiastically at seating charts, and kiss the lips of a woman I now utterly despised. Chloe must have sensed something was off because she suddenly shifted into major love-bombing mode. She was extra affectionate, cooking my favorite meals, and constantly talking about how excited she was for our future. The worst part was her sudden interest in Sarah. One evening, Chloe came home with a high-end designer silk scarf. I saw this and immediately thought of Sarah, she beamed, holding up the beautiful fabric. "It matches her eyes perfectly. I really want her to feel beautiful at the wedding, Mark. I'm going to drop it off tomorrow." For a split second, a terrifying wave of doubt washed over me. What if the group chat was just stupid, toxic venting? What if she actually did care, deep down? Was I about to destroy our lives over some nasty text messages? I almost caved. I almost deleted the screenshots and convinced myself to forgive her. I called Dave in a panic. He listened to me ramble about the silk scarf and Chloe's suddenly sweet behavior. "Mark, stop," Dave ordered, his voice sharp. "Open your phone. Look at the screenshots. Read the one where she called your sister roadkill." Read it out loud. I pulled up the image. I couldn't read it out loud. It made me sick. She bought a $200 scarf to buy her way out of guilt, Mark. It's a prop. Don't fall for the aesthetic. Dave was right. The scarf wasn't an apology. It was camouflage. She was trying to secure her perfect wedding day by keeping me pacified. My resolve hardened into solid steel. I watched her wrap the scarf in expensive tissue paper, her face a mask of manufactured empathy. I wouldn't let her hurt my family again. The stage was officially set, and the rehearsal dinner was only 48 hours away. The rehearsal dinner was held at a very upscale, ridiculously overpriced Italian restaurant downtown. Chloe's parents had paid for it, and they made sure everyone knew. The private room was decorated with custom centerpieces, and a string quartet played softly in the corner. There were about 40 people there, both our families, the entire wedding party, and a few close family friends. Chloe was holding court, wearing a stunning white silk dress, practically glowing for the cameras she had hired to capture the candid moments. My parents looked slightly uncomfortable in the fancy setting, but they smiled warmly. Sarah was sitting next to my mom, wearing the silk scarf Chloe had bought her. She looked nervous but happy to be included. Seeing Sarah wear that scarf, the scarf bought with blood money and fake pity, made my blood boil. Dave caught my eye from across the room and gave me a barely perceptible nod. It was time. After the main courses were cleared, the clinking of glasses started. Chloe's father gave a long, boastful speech about his daughter's beauty and success. Then, as the groom, it was my turn. I stood up, tapping my glass. The room fell silent. Chloe looked up at me, her eyes shining with manufactured adoration, ready for me to declare my undying love in front of the cameras. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I didn't have a piece of paper. I didn't have a heartfelt anecdote. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I started, my voice projecting clearly across the quiet room. Chloe has put a lot of effort into making everything look absolutely perfect. Aesthetics are very important to her. In fact, they are the most important thing in the world to her. Chloe smiled, taking it as a compliment, but Dave shifted his weight, bracing for impact. I unlocked my screen, selected the first screenshot, and took a deep, steadying breath. A few weeks ago, Chloe told me my sister Sarah couldn't be a bridesmaid. I continued, pacing slowly. She told me Sarah would be uncomfortable. She told me she was protecting her. I locked eyes with Chloe. Her smile faltered slightly, but that was a lie. The truth is, Chloe thought my sister was too ugly for her wedding photos. The room went dead silent. A collective gasp echoed from my family's table. Chloe's face drained of all color. "Mark, what are you doing?" she hissed, panic flashing in her eyes. "I'm sharing the reality behind the aesthetic," I said loudly. I found a group chat. Chloe, Jessica, and the bridesmaids. Let me read a few highlights. I looked down at my phone. October 12th, Jessica writes, "Major Cynthia from Rugrats vibes today." Chloe replies, "I know, it looks like roadkill. I can't even look at her." Jessica dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the floor. November 4th. I continued, my voice shaking with pure rage. Chloe writes, "Operation Nobaldi is a go. We can drink champagne without depressing hospital vibes." I looked directly at Sarah. She was crying, my mother holding her tightly. My dad looked like he was about to flip the table. "Mark, stop. You're ruining everything." I was just stressed. Chloe screamed, standing up, her flawless mask completely destroyed. She tried to play the victim, tears streaming down her face. "It was just venting. You invaded my privacy." I didn't back down. "You didn't vent. You systematically bullied a girl dealing with an illness so your Instagram photos would look better. You are a cruel, shallow, fake person. And there is absolutely no way in hell I am marrying you tomorrow." I turned off my phone and shoved it back into my pocket. The silence that followed was deafening, heavy with shock and absolute devastation. The perfect aesthetic was dead, and the ugly reality had finally burned it all down. Chaos erupted instantly. Chloe collapsed into her chair, sobbing hysterically, screaming that I had humiliated her. Her father lunged toward me, his face purple with rage, but Dave immediately stepped between us, putting a firm hand on the older man's chest. "Take a step back, sir," Dave warned, his voice dangerously low. "Your daughter did this to herself." The bridesmaids were frantically gathering their purses, whispering furiously, and avoiding eye contact with everyone. Jessica practically sprinted out the door. I walked straight over to my family's table. My dad stood up, wrapped a massive, protective arm around my shoulders, and glared at Chloe's family. "We're leaving," he announced with absolute finality. I looked down at Sarah. She was trembling, but as I reached out my hand, she took it. We walked out of the private room, leaving the shattered remains of the rehearsal dinner behind us. The immediate financial fallout was massive. I lost almost $20,000 in non-refundable deposits. The caterer, the venue, the florist, it was all gone. But honestly, it was the best money I have ever spent in my entire life. It was a cheap price to pay to save myself from a lifetime of misery. Chloe's phone calls and texts started the next morning. She went through the entire stages of grief via text. First, she was furious, threatening to sue me for the cost of the dress. Then came the bargaining, promising she would drop those friends and go to therapy. Finally, the desperate pleading, begging me not to throw away our perfect love story. I didn't respond to a single message. I blocked her number, her email, and all of her social media accounts. Dave helped me pack up my stuff from our apartment while she was at work. The social fallout was just as swift. The story spread through our mutual friend groups like wildfire. Chloe tried to spin a narrative that I had a mental breakdown, but too many people had been at the dinner. The truth was out, and her carefully curated reputation was in tatters. She had finally been exposed. I was completely broke and newly single, but my conscience had never been so clear. The weeks following the canceled wedding were a blur of logistics, awkward conversations, and aggressive boundary setting. Chloe's mother actually had the audacity to call my mom, suggesting that young people make mistakes and asking if we could salvage the deposits by having a smaller, private ceremony. My mother, a saint who rarely uses profanity, told her exactly where she could shove that private ceremony before hanging up. That was the last time we heard from her family. I moved into a small, ugly, one-bedroom apartment across town. It had zero aesthetic appeal, the paint was peeling, and the couch was from a thrift store, but it felt incredibly peaceful. I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore. I wasn't being managed. The hardest part was helping Sarah navigate the aftermath. The betrayal from Chloe had cut her deep, reinforcing all the insecurities she had been battling since her diagnosis. I made a promise to myself that I would spend the next year making it up to her. I had managed to salvage one thing from the wedding wreckage, the honeymoon fund. We had been planning 2 weeks in Greece. Instead, I transferred the tickets to Sarah's name. A month after the wedding that wasn't, I took my little sister on a 10-day trip to Italy. We ate an absurd amount of pasta, walked through ancient ruins, and for the first time in months, I heard her genuinely, deeply laugh. One afternoon in Rome, she took off her scarf because it was too hot. She walked around the city with her bald head exposed, looking incredibly fierce and beautifully resilient. I snapped a candid picture of her eating gelato, smiling at the camera. I didn't use a filter. I didn't edit the lighting. It was just raw, real, uncurated joy. It was the most beautiful photograph I had ever taken in my entire life. It's been over a year now since that disastrous rehearsal dinner. Looking back, I realize how easily I was blinded by the shiny surface of my relationship. I fell in love with a presentation, a carefully constructed avatar of a person rather than the person herself. I let the comfort of an aesthetically pleasing life distract me from the profound lack of empathy in my partner's heart. I learned the hard way that you cannot build a foundation on vanity. If someone is willing to sacrifice the emotional well-being of others to maintain an image, they do not know how to love. True partnership isn't about perfectly matching color palettes or flawlessly executed events. It's about being in the trenches together when life gets ugly, messy, and hard. To anyone out there planning a wedding or building a life with someone, pay attention to the small things. Watch how your partner treats the vulnerable people in your life. Watch what they say when they think no one else is listening. Do not ignore the red flags just because they are wrapped in pretty packaging. Today, Sarah is thriving. Her hair hasn't fully grown back, but her confidence has. She's an advocate in a local support group for young women with alopecia, and she is the strongest person I know. As for me, I'm dating again, but my priorities have completely shifted. I don't care about Instagram followers or curated apartment decor. I care about character. I care about kindness. The picture of Sarah eating gelato in Rome sits framed on my desk. Every time I look at it, I am reminded of what actual, enduring beauty looks like. I lost a fiancé, a lot of money, and my pride, but I saved my family. I wouldn't change a single decision I made that night. The truth is, some relationships are meant to fall apart, so you can clearly see who is truly standing by your side. If you are ever forced to choose between protecting your family and appeasing someone's vanity, choose your family every single time. The truth may burn everything down, but the ashes are a great place to rebuild.